And I bet you don't know who this is.
Mommy.
This is another.
That was my favorite smock. My mom made that smock. She made all my clothes all the way up into high school. I think lineage is important. In my poetry, just about every single poem, I am uncovering my roots. And when I say that, I'm talking about back to Africa and to now, where my family lives now in South Carolina. Poetry is about discovering who I am. My grandmother, who's 98 this year, is the matriarch of our family. She's like what they would call in Africa a shaman. It's not so much what she says, is what she does. It's her presence. And she relinquished that to me at some time. And I realized from her that everything I do, everything I say, and everything I see is a poem. My mom, she cooks real soul food. I mean, and it's not just soul food in that extent. It's food that really comes from her soul. And I think that's why our kids come back. It's not about the food, really. It's about the love. I write a lot about my family in poetry. My family was my first training ground. And so therefore I take a lot of my work from my mother and my father. When we first met, my father is a musician, gospel, blues, and he played his piano both night and day. So rhythm and dance was something that was inherent in our household. It is not something that was taken lightly, but it was subtle and it ran through our lives every day. I was 15 when I realized that everybody didn't have a life like that. That is where I get my ability to convey a poem.
I was in the non-commissioned office academy, Shore Air Force Base, and during our first week, we were supposed to get a pass home. And so I went to the charge of quarters to get my pass. And he gave it to me, and I just put it in my shirt pocket and drove home, which was about 6 miles, I think. I spent the weekend at home, and on the Sunday evening, about 5 o'clock, I was going to show my wife my pass and everything, and I opened the envelope and looked, and it said, weekend pass denied. So I was unlawfully at home, and of course, Glenis was born as a result of that.
What does that say? I have an older sister, 2 older brothers, and a baby brother. I'm somewhere in the middle. And in a family like that, there's a lot to learn.
6 years old, and this is her first day at school, and she went, I had her all pretty and dressed and ready to go to school for a picture taking. And when she came home with the pictures of proof, I said, Glenis, what happened to your hair? She said, oh, the man gave me a comb and told me to fix it. And she fixed it, and hair was all over her head. And so this have always been my favorite picture.
Now, she's smiling now, but I got in a lot of trouble. I got in a lot of trouble on that picture. My sister is probably one of my strongest role models. It wasn't until I was like 16 that I realized that I started walking in her footsteps. I did exactly what she was doing, and I didn't do it purposely, so I owe a lot to my older sister. From my brothers, I learned the competitiveness of sports, and one of the things my oldest brother, Willie, taught me in running, he said, you know, Glenis, you are not competing against anybody else except yourself. So do the best you can. Run against yourself. And therefore, you're going to always be a winner. But I've learned a lot from my family, and I've also written poems about each and every one of them. Some good and some not so good. But that's part of being a family.